Sure, I can tell the flames. That was it was so that was a real interesting one because every once in a while let me tell this story first. Climbing out of San Francisco, heading to wherever we're heading. It's fat, dumb, and happy. We're climbing up through 18,000 feet, and you get the ding dong from the flight attendant, and I said, "Hey, what's going on?" And she goes, "Yeah, we got a passenger back here that says your flaps are still down." Now, the first thing that made me do is, of course, look at where my flaps were and go, oh, "Shit, how did we not lift the flaps off since takeoff?" But let me tell you what happened in the flight deck prior to that. We're climbing out, and both the FO and I look at each other and go, "Huh, this airplane doesn't seem to be flying like it normally flies." Right? Don't you think like it's flying weird? Like the pitch angle looks weird, we're not going the right speed, this all seems weird. Yeah, it does seem weird. Okay. And we go off doing our thing, right? So, one thing I can tell you is that anytime an airplane seems like it's flying weird, it is. And you should probably start taking a look at what is actually going on. So, we had a ding dong. "Hey, passenger says our flaps are still in." Ooh. Right? I'm going to put those up. Remember when we said the airplane's flying weird? Yeah, that's why. So, that in that story, there's a couple things. Number one, run your checklist, idiots. Right? Because if we would have run our checklist, we obviously didn't.
Yeah.
Because if we would have, that would not have been a problem. So, morons.
Or you skipped the
right?
perfunctory run of the checklist.
Number two, now how do I react to that? Right? Because I can also because my initial reaction was, no, it's not. Right? Because it can't be wrong. Captain of an airliner. Right? But I can very easily look and see what I did. So, what do I decide to learn from that? Do I decide to take that on and say to myself, all right, we got to learn something? Or do I stand in my captainness and not get my own ego hurt and say to myself, well, we didn't put them up because of this, or we didn't, yeah, no, they're supposed to be down right now, or, whatever idiot excuse that I'm going to go ahead and try and sell myself, right? And then show the dude sitting next to me that, yeah, that's the way you do it, because you don't want to have your ego take a hit. And in that, you learn nothing other than how to protect yourself, rather than how to protect everybody, right? My ego is more important than your safety.
Yeah.
Right? It's more important than my safety, is what I'm saying. It's better for me to have something bad happen to this airplane and nothing bad happen to my ego than it is to operate it correctly and say to yourself, you could have been better. And you've seen this be a common theme in our training, and you've seen it be a common theme in our discussions here, is you got to take your ego out of the flight deck. It just has no place there. Because when your ego is there and you have to protect your ego, it's really difficult to learn the lessons that you need to learn. And it's really difficult to honestly evaluate yourself, because you'll always find an excuse to have your ego protected. And then, especially if you're with somebody else who is, especially somebody that is a subordinate to you or is looking up to you in some way, what have you taught them? Right? Taught them to be safe. Taught them to take care of safety first, or you taught them to make sure their ego is okay, right? Because even if they think, oh God, that guy's an idiot, that's still the lesson you taught them. That's still, and unless they're a strong enough person, unless they're wily enough to say, can't listen to that guy at all. And then if you've done that, you've completely undermined yourself. So you've either taught the wrong lesson, or you've completely undermined your own expertise, because you're unwilling to admit to any kind of mistake whatsoever. And this is a story I tell all the time to my flight instructor candidates, is when you're asked a question and you don't know the answer, or you do something wrong, man, you got to be the first one to evaluate and admit that, because otherwise, how do they learn how to evaluate and admit what they did? And if they can't, who are you teaching them to be? Who are you teaching them to be? The kind of pilot you want to fly with? Not for me, man. Not for me. I want a pilot that looks at it every single time and goes, man, I could have done pretty good flight. I could have done this better. Pretty good flight. Could have done this better. And I haven't had one flight yet where I haven't thought to myself, pretty good flight. Could have done this better. Right? I shouldn't say pretty good flight. I've had a lot of terrible flights that I thought I also could have done better. But you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So the passenger says, flight, the right engine's on fire, right? So I start, so my eyes get giant, and my FO says, whoa, what's going on? Because he can't hear the conversation I'm having. And I said, hey, we're not going to do anything just yet, but we got a passenger that says our right engine's on fire. And he says, what? You know, he starts like, right, instantly reacting. Like, and to his credit, that's our training, right? Engine's on fire, start going through things, right?
Yeah,
what have I told you, right? Most things aren't emergencies, but if you got a fire, take care of it right this second. You don't have time, right?
Yeah.
But when I look at all my engine instruments, I got 3 fire detection loops. I should be able to, there should be bells, buzzers, and whistles going off everywhere, right? I should see engine indications that are terrible, right? All sorts of things should be telling me that this engine's on fire. Yet none of them. We're running perfectly fine. Perfectly fine. And I say, hey, stop. Take a look at everything. Just everything here says we're not on fire. And it's just some dude in the back saying that we are. I don't know that guy. I don't know what his motivation is. I don't know anything about him. I can assume that he's telling me what he believes is the truth. But that doesn't mean anything. Because I don't know who that guy is. Right?
But he could be right, and the instruments could be wrong.
For sure.
Yeah.
Maybe. So I call up the flight attendant. I'm still on the phone with the flight attendant. And I say, hey, look, will you please go back, ask him what he's seeing, see what he's seeing. Because also at this time, you have to remember that as a result of 9/11, getting out of the flight deck is an arduous task. It means that the flight attendant has to come up. We have to, do this whole seat switch thing. One of us has to be on oxygen. It's a nightmare to do, right? And so if I can avoid this whole rigmarole, I'm going to avoid it, right? Because it's just nothing but a huge distraction, especially if we actually do have an engine on fire. I don't want my flight attendant up here. I want my FO up here because I'm going to need some help, right? So she goes back and looks at it, comes back and goes, yep, we're definitely on fire. Oh my God. So now I know my flight attendant, right? And I know she's not going to be like, yeah, we're on fire if we're not on fire, right? And I know that's true. But again, nothing in my engine instruments is telling me no fire detection. Nothing is telling me that we're on fire. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. This engine is running optimally. There's no problems with it whatsoever. And we've been flying this airplane all day. It's not, it's not like we've been seeing anomalies with it, or anything like that. So I say, okay, great. And I look over at my FO and I say, well, okay. She says we're on fire. But I'm still really having a hard time believing it because nothing else here is saying we're on fire. And I'm not about to declare an emergency, have to land wherever. We don't even know where we're going to land right now because we're halfway in between wherever we are and wherever we're going. I don't even know where we're going to land, but we're going to have to find somewhere suitable to land. And I'm not about to do this to the 40 people that are in the back without knowing for sure that's what's going on. Because what we're talking about is not only shutting down that engine, but we're going to basically ruin it when we dump fire extinguishing, because that's what we're going to have to do. And then what if we're not on fire and we catch on fire, right? And then the other engine catches, we shut down the engine that was good and the other one actually does happen to go on fire, right? Now we've blown both our bottles. We can't fight that fire. Now we are an engineless airplane, right? That's not going to be good. So there's a lot of things that have to go into this decision before I panic and just hit the button because, right? Because there's major ramifications if I'm wrong. Either way, honestly, right? Either way.
Yeah.
So, but right now, as far as I can tell, I've got 2 working engines. So if we're on fire, it's not that bad, honestly, at this point. So I say, okay, great. I want you, because he was so gung-ho to shut these engines down, right? He's just training. He was so gung-ho to shut this engine down. I'm like, all right, you go back. You take a look at the engine and tell me what's going on. Okay. So we do the swap. Flight attendant comes up, he goes back, and we do the whole thing, right? He comes running back. Yeah, we're on fire. Shit. Right? Because now I'm like, so I call up ATC and I say, hey, look, if we're on fire, I should be able to see a big trail of smoke behind me, right? That should be a thing. I call up ATC and I say, hey, look, we might have a problem. I'd like to do a 360 up here to see if I can see my smoke trail behind me, right? I should be able to see it for miles. We've been on fire now for a while, right? Yeah. So I should be able to see something, right? So we do a 360. There's no smoke behind me. Nothing. What's going on, SkyWest? Well, maybe have an engine on fire, but I'm not entirely sure. So I'm not, just stand by. Do you need to declare? No, I do not need to declare an emergency. So talk with my FO. I said, look, I'm going to go back there. I'm going to look at it myself now. You are not, under no circumstances, are you to shut this engine down without me being here. Under no circumstances. Like under threat of me hitting you in the head with a crash axe, are you to shut this engine down while I'm back here? Okay. Right? Not going to shut the engine down, right? No, promise. Okay. Don't need, I mean, like, I swear to God, if your hand even reaches up there, I will chop it off. Do not. So I go back there. And I start, and I look at where he's talking about. And where the flames were coming out, there's a little oil access door where you open the door and you check the oil level of the engine. You do it every single pre-flight. So every single day, that door gets opened, levels get looked at, the door gets closed. Not only every single day, but before every single flight, right? So it's not just your pre-flight, but it's an every single flight we check the engine on. Every single flight we check the engine on. So that door is getting opened at a minimum of 4 times a day. At a minimum, that's how many times it's being opened. And what I could see coming out of that door was a little orange, going like that, and man, it looked like fire. It really did look like fire. And when I first looked at it, I thought to myself, holy crap, they're right, we are on fire. And then I started going, wait, hold on. I know some things about this airplane. And this is where it's really important to have an understanding of your systems. And it's why I really suggest that everybody goes on to the crew and takes an airplane apart, puts an airplane back together, changes the oil on it, all that kind of stuff, because from a piloting standpoint, that can only benefit you. Only benefit you, because you'll learn things about this airplane that you couldn't learn sitting here with me learning how to fly an airplane. And what I knew about that airplane was that there was a gasket that was around that oil access door. And most of the time those gaskets were orange. And what had happened was that gasket had just started to get a little bit old and started to kind of squirt out the side. And it had gotten caught in the slipstream and was just going like crazy. And it was going so fast in the slipstream there that it looked like flames licking its way out. But you had to know all those things in order to see that. And I only knew that because I had paid attention when I was pre-flighting as a first officer, and I knew what that was. And I was so convinced that we didn't have a fire that I was able to, I didn't jump to the conclusion that we were on fire. I shouldn't say I was convinced that we didn't have a fire. I just wasn't convinced that we were on fire. So I was open to other possibilities. Yeah. Whereas everybody else on board was not open to the possibility that we were not on fire. We were definitely on fire. Everybody knew that we were on fire, and all the evidence says we are on fire.
Yeah. They went looking for fire and
they found fire. Exactly.
Yeah.
I feel like what I did was I went looking not to disprove that we were on fire, but to prove that we were on fire, right? I didn't go back there thinking, oh, we're not on fire, and I'm going to prove that we're not on fire. I went back there going, man, you got to prove to me that we are. And when I saw what I saw, and then I knew what I knew, I was like, okay, man, I can really see where you guys made that mistake. And now, from a customer service standpoint, right, because you're not just flying an airplane, you're not just responsible to know systems and stuff like that. I've also got to take care of all these people that are back here, right? And if you're not an airline pilot, You might have passengers that you have to take care of, right? That's your responsibility as a pilot in command. You're not just a machine operator.
Mm-hmm.
You also have to be public relations up there. And if you're not being public relations up there, nobody's going to want to fly with you. I guarantee it, right?
Yeah.
Hey, man, we're going to hit some bumps today, right? It's going to be a fine flight, but it will be just a little bit bumpy. If you tell your passengers that, they'll be a lot more comfortable when they land wherever you're going than if you don't tell them anything and then just write out these bumps thinking, oh, I've just got to fly the airplane. I've got to fly the airplane. They're going to look at it and go, oh, my God, he can't even talk.
Yeah.
He's
What's
so
wrong?
scary. Exactly.
Why didn't he warn us about this?
Exactly. He must not have known.
Yeah.
How good a pilot he is, right? All that kind of stuff, right? That's what people think. So you're also in public relations that way.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sitting up there at the front of the airplane anyway, and now I got to look back at, 40 eyes that are like this. They're like, they've already dialed their families. We're all going to die.
The stewardess has gone back. The
Right.
co-pilot's gone back. The
Right.
pilot's gone back.
Right.
Something's
going on. And I say, hey, look, okay, so elephant in the room. Everybody thinks we're on fire. Right? Everybody thinks that. We're not. And I went through my explanation. And some people were, like, oh, okay. And other people were like, I don't know if I can believe this guy,
Looks
kind
like
of thing.
fire.
Looks like fire. And
Yeah.
so I did what I could, right? Trust me, we're 100% safe. If I thought we were unsafe in any way, shape, or form, we'd definitely have this airplane on the ground. This is, this gasket. That's all it is. Blah blah blah. I'll go back up. So now I got to talk to my crew, and I say, here's what it is, guaranteed. And as soon as I said it to my FO, he's like, oh my God, I'm an idiot. It's like, no, you're not an idiot, man. You just went looking for fire,
Yeah.
and what you found was fire. I mean, it looked like fire. So if you thought it was fire, you were already predisposed to thinking that.
Yeah.
And the only thing that I did was say, man, there's nothing here. I just don't trust that we're actually on fire. So I didn't go back not looking for fire. I just went back, like, prove it, man. You got to prove to me that you're actually on fire. And that mentality allowed me to have an open enough mind to be able to then think, what are the systems on this airplane? And if I know the systems on this airplane, I'm pretty sure I know what the problem is. And sure enough, when we landed, that gasket's just hanging out just a little bit. And my FO says to me, man, I feel terrible because I should have noticed that gasket was hanging out. But when I was doing my pre-flight, open, check the oil, close it. And I said, should you have, should you not have? I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I don't know. But you also have to remember, I've been doing this for a few years longer than you. So I've got, this is why I'm a captain and you're an FO. And it's not, this is just where you were, and you wanted to react in a way that your training dictated. And that wasn't necessarily wrong, but they put us up here with that training and our best judgment.
Mm-hmm.
And so if all you're doing is saying, well, my training says, then you're not using your judgment. And that's why they gave us keys to this airplane, is because we have superior judgment. And so you have to make yourself measured. Like I say, it's why I'm a captain and you're not. And it's not a slight against you. When you have this, if you put this in your tool belt, right, and you hang on to this experience and say, man, I learned a lot from that, that is going to influence your decisions as a captain later on. And that's how you become a captain, right? Is because you do, things that, that wasn't, I did lots of dumb things. Honestly, I did lots of dumb things as a captain too, right? But am I learning from those dumb things? Did I learn from the captains who said to me, no, it's no big deal, man, but here's what you got to think about next time? And that's the important part about being a pilot. That's the whole thing about always make sure that you're learning. Always make sure that you're open to that learning. Mm-hmm. You never can know enough, right? So strive for that knowledge at all times, because it might be the very thing that keeps you from shutting down an engine for absolutely no reason. And like I said, so what? Let's say I would have shut down that engine. Then let's go through the ramifications of that, because there's all sorts of different possibilities. Once I blow the bottles, that engine is shut down, for sure. So there's a financial impact to the company in a number of ways, right? And maybe I don't care about that, but let's say I do as a decent employee.
Yeah.
So I shut down that engine. It's got to go through maintenance now. That's a massive expense, right? They got to, I don't know what exactly happens, but I know they got to clean that whole thing out, right? So they're going to pull that engine off. And so that's number one. Number two, where we're going to land is not going to be somewhere that has maintenance, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's not going to be somewhere that has support for all these passengers that are now on board my airplane that I've declared an emergency on, right? I've put us in a situation, an inherently dangerous situation, right? Because I went from operating on 2 engines to operating on 1 engine. That's not how this airplane's designed to operate, right? They gave it 2 for a reason, right? So I've increased the danger exponentially while gaining nothing. And then, like I said before, what if this engine catches on fire, legitimately? And I've blown both my bottles, right? I've only got 2 fire extinguisher bottles. And since I wasn't ever going to get the fire out, I would have blown one. We would have gone back and looked.
Oh, yeah, the fire wouldn't have gone out.
Couldn't have, right?
Yeah.
I'd have gone back, I'd have blown one bottle, and I'd have said, is it still burning? And the flight attendant would have said, yeah, it's still burning, and I would have blown the other one. So now I've got no fire extinguishing capabilities left. What if that engine now catches on fire? Not only can I not put that engine out, but I've already killed this engine, and now I'm a no-engine airplane. Holy crap. Right? There's a lot of dangerous things that are happening there. And then what you don't realize is that if I haven't turned on my APU in time, if I haven't turned on something to generate power and provide hydraulic pressure and electrical generation power, I'm going to have a real hard time getting my gear out. I'm going to have a real hard time steering this airplane because now I don't have any kind of assist from hydraulics or electrical because I don't have any power generation because that engine's dead and this engine's dead. So now not only am I flying a brick, I'm flying a brick that I can't fly. So lots and lots and lots of bad things could have happened if I would have acted hastily, right? And it's why I tell you guys all the time, there's very few emergencies that anything has to be done right this second. Very few things. And sometimes even fire doesn't have to be done right this second. The most important thing is being thoughtful about how you're going to address this emergency. If you have an emergency, right, one thing about emergencies is they're individual, right? Your emergency may not be my emergency and vice versa, right? It really depends on so many different things, experience level. Because my FO certainly would have called it an emergency, right? Certainly would have. He'd have blown both bottles and declared an emergency and figured out whatever he needed to figure out. So his emergency certainly wasn't my emergency. But it doesn't mean that he was necessarily wrong. Just that's how he viewed it. And he took the services that he felt like he needed. And that's every pilot's right. But sometimes you want to hold off on declaring that emergency because I've heard a lot of people declare an emergency when their landing gear wouldn't come down in a 182. Well, does your hand pump work? If it does, then why... The problem isn't declaring the emergency, right, and inconveniencing other people, because if you do that here in the pattern, they're going to land everybody or send everybody wherever they're going to send them. They're going to give you the airport, and you're going to land that airplane after you pump the gear down, and you'll taxi in, and everything will be okay. You declared your emergency, right? No big deal. Maybe some paperwork has to get filed, maybe. But no big deal. You just inconvenience some people, right? But I'll also posit that once you declare that emergency, what happens to your mentality in it? What happens to you mentally once you've declared an emergency?
Well, that cup is, oh boy, it's a lot of stress now, a lot of pressure. You have an emergency.
You have an emergency. You've declared an emergency. You said it over the radio. Mayday, mayday, mayday. This is as bad as it's ever going to get, right? And like you said, what that does is just elevates. And one thing we know for sure is once you get to the top, handling anything else is going to be real difficult. So what if you have your gear emergency and then something else happens, or the winds are bad, or whatever? I'm not saying that that's always the way you need to think about it. Certainly some things are just definitely emergencies. But when you have a moment to think, you should always take that moment. Always take that moment. Because our first reaction is rarely ever the one that we end up sticking with, right? How many times has somebody said something to you that's made you angry and you could have reacted in an angry way, but you thought about it for a second and said, at work this happens all the time, right? You write your email back, and then you read it and go,
I don't need to say that.
That felt good to write. Now I'm gonna actually be a decent human being.
Yeah.
Right? Your first reaction oftentimes is not a great one. I know that's true for me. So I really try to give myself the space to have the reaction that I'm going to have. Can't stop that.
Yeah.
Then be thoughtful about it. And then the action that I choose. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the important part, is what are you choosing to do here? And if you still need to be angry, okay, fair, right? Maybe include some other people in that email and say, hey, look, this isn't okay. I'm not going to be a dick in my email, but I'm still, upset. Or maybe you look at it and go, man, you know what, I don't know what that guy's dealing with. Maybe he just had a horrible morning, right? Kid's late to school and he didn't have lunch. I don't know what's going on in his life. But he didn't make the best choice. Doesn't mean that I have to make a poor one.
Right.
Right? So, same thing's true here. Nothing's telling me that anything's wrong other than some dude I don't know. And a guy that's eager to shut an engine down. And a flight attendant who doesn't know airplane systems. I mean, she knows the back of the cabin and she will take care of those people better than anybody else in that airplane. But she doesn't know the airplane, right? She doesn't know the engine. She doesn't know any of that kind of stuff. So, who do I trust in that? Well, I guess it's me, right? And I've got to take that as pilot in command, because that's what I am. I got to take that ownership. I got to take all that responsibility on myself and figure out what is the best course of action. That whole entire event took about 10 or 15 minutes. It was a long time, right? Because I did a circle and I talked to ATC and I talked to my FO exhaustively and I talked to my flight attendant and I'd stared at those engine instruments for God knows how long, just looking to see even a wiggle, right? The whole thing took a really long time. 15, like I said, I think when we looked back on it, from the time that we got called to the time we decided we would not have an emergency, I think it was like 13 minutes or something, whatever it was. That's a really long time to have an emergency that you didn't declare, right?
Yeah.
We traveled a long ways in that time. We talked to a lot of people in that time. But in the end, not declaring an emergency was absolutely the right thing to do, even though we were on fire, and all fires are emergencies. So, first story, passenger was absolutely correct. We had the flaps down. I bought that guy a beer. Beer's on me, man. That's embarrassing as hell. Thanks for catching it. Thanks for having an eye out for me. I appreciate that. I really do. Even though you made me feel like a dumbass, it's really me that made me feel like a dumbass, and right?
Yeah.
I can appreciate that. And in the second one, I couldn't trust that passenger at all, right? But in both cases, what did I do? Passenger says this, I immediately go and look at what my airplane's telling me and say, he's right. Or, I don't think so.
Doesn't look right.
Right? So, what are you looking for? What are you trying to accomplish? What is, right? And all of these things take time to think about. And if you put yourself in an emergency right away, you don't give yourself the space to think. You don't give yourself the time to think. You just flood yourself with adrenaline right away because you're in this emergency. And now your thoughts are, it's much harder to have them be it's at that point you're in fight or flight, right? And you're reacting. You're not reacting, stopping, thinking.
Yeah.
Right? The reaction's fine, but it's not always right. So we can, if the saber-toothed tiger isn't chasing us right now, maybe don't run. Right?
Maybe if you run, then maybe he'll see you.
Right. Exactly. I got the feeling I want to run, but I don't think he sees me right now.
Yeah. Well, just hang tight.
Exactly. And watch him walk on by. Okay, that was scary. Whew. And what did I learn in that? Sometimes you don't panic.